Hi everyone, so I'm François, the VP Strategy at CodinGame. So first off, thanks to the family for having me tonight. And to start with, I have two questions. The first one being, who is hiring developers? Okay, yeah, always tense. And the other one is, who is a developer? Okay, so pretty much the guys that know about CodinGame. To start with, I just want to mention two quotes that structure or reflect the state of the market regarding developers. The first one was said by Jeff Atwood. It was an article in 2007, and I think it's pretty accurate today. To say that out of 200 developers that you want to hire, actually only one of them already know how to code. And it's still accurate today because as you can see, technologies that you use are evolving pretty fast. Just think about artificial intelligence, just think about the influence of JavaScript, for instance, today, whereas a couple of years back it wasn't really used as a programming language. The other one was said by Kakul Srivastava. Yeah, I learned the name, I didn't just read it. The VP product of GitHub, who once said recently that the classic understanding that we have of a developer who is behind the computer and to who you give a product roadmap and it just executes is definitely dead. So today you now have to involve the developer in terms of product roadmap, execution, vision, etc. So a few figures about the hiring market, the tech hiring market. The last one is the most interesting in my opinion, because just to show you that to keep engaging developers around Google technologies, they have to organize 70 events per week, which means that Google doesn't engage developers just because of the name. They engage developers because they are extremely active regarding developers and technologies. It definitely was the time, so I just wanted to show you this picture of Watt and Boulton. So you probably know about James Watt, the inventor of Steam, but you probably don't know about his associate, Max Boulton. And actually, Watt became famous because he got associated with Boulton, and that's what you're looking for when you want to hire a developer. It's not somebody that is going to execute only. It's somebody that is going to be all along the road with you, and you have to sell him him or her, of course. You have to sell him the vision, the execution, and the mission you are on. So I'm going to be quick on CodinGame. So we define ourselves as a programmer hub where top developers meet and interact by solving complex programming challenges in graph theory, in artificial intelligence, in encoding, decoding, all kinds of programming fields. We have 25 programming languages, and we have different types of games on which programmers keep playing every day. So we have a community of, as of today, 368 developers around the world. The platform was launched actually in September 2014. There has been a great growth and almost uniquely organic. So we now have a great insight about what the developers want, why they are on CodinGame, and what they would like to work to program on in the coming months. So based on our experience, because we had to go deeper into what developers want, into why they are on CodinGame, well, we highlighted 5 key needs of a developer. The first one is constantly learn new things. It can appear pretty obvious, but it is today far more true than before because, again, technology is evolving pretty fast. Second one is get inspired by the best. One of the reasons why the developers go to our platform is because they will find experienced developers who know different languages, frameworks, etc. And they need to feel that they can be inspired by your CTO, by your VP of engineering. They need to know that they will learn something in your company, no matter almost the programming field. They just need to know that they will learn something and be inspired by someone that is really skilled. The third one is contribute to meaningful projects. We all say as entrepreneurs that we're going to change the world, of course, but that's something that you really need to embody and to sell to your developers, because if you can't sell it to a developer, you probably won't sell it to a VC, to a journalist, to anybody else. So you really need to embody this, even if your company is a marketplace. It doesn't mean that the programming challenge won't exist. On the contrary, you'll be able to make a difference on the technology, because the rest of the competitors will just use the most common technologies. But if you make a difference on this, we will both hire a great programmer, and you will at the same time build a great product. And the last one is have fun. So everybody wants to have fun, but just think about for a second about one of your developers in your team. They are behind a computer, and you spend most of the time programming, coding, which can be a pretty lonely activity, can be pretty intense for your brain, so you really need to cut for a time. And if you see one of your developers playing on CodinGame, being on any other websites, just don't feel guilty, don't feel sad, etc. It's completely normal, and you should encourage them to learn to train on other websites than purely professional like GitHub or Stack Overflow. Then I just kind of a not-to-do list based on the experience that we have with companies that we work with, because we help companies source, assess, and retain talents. And so those are the most common 5 mistakes that we encounter. The first one is just keep sending them messages on LinkedIn or anywhere else where you just copy-paste the name and send thousands of messages. It doesn't work. It might work. You might find somebody by the end of the day if you send 500 messages, but it's definitely not the right way to engage the most talented developers in your field. The second one is just thinking that the developer is here to execute, that he doesn't need to be involved in the product roadmap, in the features, in analyzing the feedbacks of your customers, etc. He has to be, because eventually he has the eye on the product and he can see where you can go and where you can't go. The third one is not understanding them. The point is just to tell you that you don't need to learn C#, C++, etc. if you want to hire a software developer. You just need to understand the basic languages, and you just need to learn the basic tools that he's going to use. For instance, what kind of IDE, for instance, what kind of frameworks he's going to work on, etc. It's really important because that's the way you can understand, for instance, his workload, and it's also the way it can appear as legitimate to talk to your developers. Fourth one, not challenging them. If they're joining your company, it's because they want to learn, so you have to challenge them on any topic that you can find. It can be related to the products, to the technology specifically, or it can be related, again, to the vision, and just ask him, okay, what do you think we should do in the next couple of months, given our capacities, given the feedback that we receive, etc. And the fifth one is not freeing them. For instance, all developers at Microsoft have 2 hours every day during which they can do anything they want, being coding related. So they can go on CodinGame, they can go anywhere else, they can just stop working and just have a chat with the CTO, VP of engineering, etc. And it will be considered as work. And it's an obligation when you work at Microsoft as a developer. So, based on our experience, there are 5 key tips that I would like to share. Again, those are the tips that we got from our experience as a company, but also from our experience as a company selling hiring solutions, sourcing solutions, assessment solutions to companies, from large ones like NASDAQ, eBay, Adobe, Sage, etc., to very small startups. So the first one is know your market. It may be, again, pretty obvious if you work in a very technological environment, like, I don't know, let's say cryptography or artificial intelligence, etc. But even if you're working in a field that is not known for being particularly technological, you still need, again, to know the kind of languages, frameworks, etc. that your developers are going to work on in order to be legitimate and, again, to make the difference where you can. Second, just to give you an example of this, it's a pretty striking one because actually I think nobody here knows about LavaStorm, right? Yeah. It's not a very sexy company. Definitely not. It's a data analytics company based in the US. So at first, for developers, it's clearly not the company in which you want to work. Still, each year, they hire 100 developers. Why? Because all the HR in LavaStorm actually had a training for 1 month to know the basics of coding and have meetups every year with developers. Well, they are HR, they're not developers. But that's how you can hire developers, because the first sentences that you're going to share with the developer, he will understand that you know what you're talking about. The second one is be where developers are. Developers might be on LinkedIn, but they will definitely be on meetups. You want to use JavaScript, you'll go to meetups for Node.js, AngularJS, etc. That's where you will find the most talented developers and the most passionate about their topic. Again, one striking example, it was in March 2015, we organized a special event with Parrot when they were launching a new drone. And the guy who won the contest, over 1,000 participants, is not a developer. He used to play violin for a living. They just discovered programming during his free time, and he was actually ranked the best in front of developers working, for instance, in top tech technologies in France, like BlaBlaCar, Sigfox, or etc. Third advice, leverage your assets. First asset is your vision. You have a vision, you want to change the world. Again, you have to embody it, and you have to sell it to the developers so that it will make the difference. There is one developer in the room that I know. It was a couple of months ago. I wanted to start a company. He didn't join me. He joined some of my friends that were creating another company. And a few months later, I realized why? It's because my friends had really a huge vision. They were guys you want to work with. So I understood a couple of months later why he did that. So your asset is your vision. Your asset might be your CTO. Your CTO has a great experience in his field. You have to convince him to showcase his skills, to go to meetups, to exchange on GitHub on specific projects he's working on projects that he finds interesting. Ask questions on Stack Overflow, etc., etc. And last thing in your assets, you also have a network. So, okay, maybe you didn't go to 42, to Epitech, Epita, I don't know. But you might have people around you that know people that know people that know developers. So in any way, you'll find someone to talk to, not necessarily to hire, but only to get advice when it comes to hiring tech people. This was based again on one real case that we have with Amadeus. So Amadeus is the company behind any booking technology for Opodo, eDreams, etc. The way Amadeus lands, the way they hire a large number of developers each year, whereas it's not a very highly visible technology company like Google or Facebook, it's because they have a very strong vision on their market and on the future of their market, and because they keep challenging developers every month. So that's one of the companies that we regularly work with. So they constantly ask us for new challenges, new puzzles, etc., to challenge the developers on. And it really makes a difference because when the developers goes to your company, see the other developers, the way they think, etc., they soon realize that it's an environment where they will have fun and they will be challenged. Fourth one, you need to get help. So you can leverage your network, but you can look at any other solutions. I'm not here to sell any solution, coding games or any other solution, but you have many online solutions to source talents, to assess them, and for learning, of course, you have many. It can be MOOCs, it can be training platform like CodinGame. You have many, and just you can try some of them. They are most of the time pretty efficient. So yeah, it's one quick example. For instance, La Fourchette, with La Fourchette, with our assessment platform, so they send tests to developers to evaluate their coding skills. And it's a great way to have a standard scoring, so it can be a CodinGame or any other solution. It gives you a great standard scoring. And last one is make them grow. So I took the example of Microsoft, but we have another example. There is one of our clients, Sphere, which is an new generation IT services company that is building digital platforms. And again, every month you have coding challenges that gather all the tech team. And so there is a great dose of team building and coding challenges that makes the difference. And just a few words about how we work. So we're a very specific company because we work with developers, for developers in developers' environments. So that's something very specific. So for instance, we receive applications every week because we have built a product for developers, and I think it's something that is pretty specific. The way we work is that, for instance, when we hire people, so there is technical assessment of the developer. First step is in classical online assessment. Second step is a whiteboard, like at Google. But the most important interview is the last one. So it's around human fit. And we have one question that we ask every people is just tell me about your greatest failure in life. It's not professional, it's personal. And if we think that the developer is giving a real answer, like for instance, we had once a guy that told us, I was supposed to get married and my wife just dumped me 1 month before the wedding. Say, okay, he opened up, so he's ready to join the team, for instance. It can be tough, but it's a great example for us. And every day we work in project groups. So, for instance, in each project group, you have a leader, who is usually a developer, and he manages the entire team. And it's just at the end of the week that we make the calculation, that we share the feedbacks, etc., to have a general management. But most of the time, it's just project management. And so basically, we mix 3 elements to assess, to retain, to hire. Assessment, we have a platform, the whiteboard, and the human fit. To hire, we engage usually people around technical challenges, can be online, can be offline. We use personal networks, but just be careful with referral recruiting because most of the time you can recreate like university groups within the company. And of course, schools might be obvious, but just get good relations, for instance, with Epita, Epitech, be at the events most of the time, and you will see that developers will remember you and that they will be more likely to talk to you. And the last one, retain, well, just encourage developers to have their personal projects that they can work on during lunch, right after work, with their professional computers, of course, and try as much as possible to have group projects, I think, because we just implemented this, it was, I think, 2 months ago. Before it was a bit difficult to have the vision shared by the entire team, and now with the group projects, developers that are really involved in features and product roadmap, and we have necessarily to share the same vision if we want the groups to be efficient. I think that's it. So thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. You've mentioned briefly the idea of being very careful with referral recruitment because it more or less will create this sort of, homogeneity within the team. So you have the same pack you had from school inside your company. How do you deal with that? With the fact that you can't really go around this? Since if you're working mostly on referral, you will end up with the same pack of people you had from that same school. That's question 1. And the corollary question is, is this really that big of a deal for you? And let's say if you envision your team growing up to a team of maybe 100 or thousands, is this going to be a huge issue, especially if you go global?
Yeah, thanks for the question, because actually that's a case we experienced recently, both internally for the company and with one of our clients. Yeah, even for a company, we're 20 people, so we're not like Google or Facebook. But even for us, it was a problem because actually we have a guy that, you know, a bit above the rest of the developers, who is the product manager. So he's in charge of the execution and the way we go. But every time developers want to share their ideas, etc. So we had a case where we had a number of developers that went to the same school and that actually together wanted to go against some of the ideas of the product manager. So it's not, yeah, you have to be at least, I think, 10 people, for instance, but even for us it was a problem. Hopefully we found a solution. But yeah, we had the case with one of our customers, which is Box in the US, and they have very serious problem. I think that many companies in the Valley have the same problems, that they usually hire developers from, let's say, yeah, most of the time Stanford, and they just realized 1 year ago that they have groups of Stanford alumni, and that there is no real manager trying to rule the group and have the product executed the way they want. So yeah, I think it was a problem for them, and it might be a problem for us if we just keep hiring in the same environment.
Sorry, I have one last question since I have the mic. I'm sorry. It is well known that there's a bias when you hire people. You sort of want people to look like you, and this is backed up by data. So since you're involved in the recruitment process and hiring process, do you believe that your company should come up with some sort of strategy up front, or maybe even if it's a marketing stunt, just to get the taureau par les cornes, get a hold of it, and sort of come up with using this bias or working against that bias as a way of promoting yourself against competitors? Or do you think it's far-fetched and you can't really do it since you actually have to hire real people?
Well, actually, we opted for a solution that might seem a bit awkward, but I'm going to explain it. So recently, I'm not going to say when, because internally that might generate a bit of conflict, but we had a recruitment of somebody, and I didn't agree on the recruitment of this person. But I didn't put any veto on this. I just said, okay, I'm not sure the person will fit our culture, etc. So the CEO and the CTO, we talked together and they say, okay, do you want to say that you're putting a veto? I said, no, because there is no huge risk, it's just something I might be afraid of. And I say, okay, in case you don't have any veto, we're going to hire the person. So that's the way you proceed. You can express doubts, etc. But anyway, the three co-founders at the end will have the last word, except there is a huge problem. That's the way we did it. So far, I think we had to fire one person only, and it was due to a misfit in terms of culture, etc. And the way we fire people is just that we are very transparent. So we take them in a room and say, okay, there is definitely a problem between you and the team in terms of culture, the way we work, etc. Because we have a very special way of working. We can have developers not working for 2 hours, but learning a new stuff, and it's completely normal for us. And so it happened once, and we are fully transparent, and most of the time they realize that, yeah, there was a misfit.
Thank you for your presentation. The interesting one was the violinist who did better than the other coders. We're talking about the digital transformation and companies changing, the Uberization and the Airbnb of industry. And we hear that there's like 100,000 developer roles that are available in Ile-de-France or in France, and they're not being filled. And then we're having a whole lot of other people who are not developers, are not trying to convert to be developers, but are coming in as junior developers, but being as senior people. Is there a role for these people? How do they get integrated into the young startups, maybe having a lot of industry experience, but not great coding experience?
Tough one. Actually, well, like most of the time in the US, they tend to have more solutions than we do in France. So for instance, in our ecosystem, you have something called Udacity, which actually can give a nano degree to people who are not supposed to be professional developers, but who can learn very specific skills in terms of programming and acquire just a nano degree to get started within the company. In France, we have 42. That is supposed to fill the gap between the huge geeks that were born for programming and the other people that just found about programming, like the guy we had for Parrot. So the project of 42 is an excellent one. We just like maybe online solutions only, and MOOCs are definitely not the right path to convert people fan of programming to professional developers, because we know that people who take MOOCs and eventually finish them are usually people with master degree, who usually already went to Stanford, etc. So they're not really the best target to convert people. So again, yeah, in the US, I think you have many more solutions, and especially in the Valley, for instance, Box and LinkedIn, are looking for people outside of the programming event. So, for instance, they go to, let's say, a show about computers in general, where you will have Dell, IBM, etc., and just talk to people and see if they really like programming. And if they like programming, they can onboard them in the company for training, etc., because there is just a huge lack of talent in the Valley, so you have to take people that are not professional programmers.
Yeah, I promise I'm not paid by the family to come up with questions, but what you just said is interesting, because how do you actually deal with people not coming from the regular, as a French person I'm talking, you know, not coming from the regular curriculum of coming out of an engineer school, since in France we have a very big, huge engineer culture. How do you cope with the fact that you will not find proper engineers, since if we follow your first slide, most of them don't seem to know how to code, supposedly. How do you go and get people outside of the engineer industry if you test them out as engineer, or if you try to put them in the engineer's mold? How does it go for people like you?
Yeah, it's true. In France, we have a huge difference between people that go to Epitech, 42, etc., and people who go to Centrale, Polytechnique. There is a huge difference between the two. If I make things very simple, most of the time people that are real engineers tend to look for the absolute best solutions, no matter the time it takes, whereas the developers from Epitech will just iterate as much as they can to find the right one. So then in terms of culture, hiring, etc., for us it's pretty complex, because we have received profiles from people who went to engineering school, and actually, if I'm correct, in the team there is no one who went to. We are looking to hire someone that went to Polytechnique, but you know, it is very special, so that's why I think it might work. But most of the time, people from Polytechnique, Centrale, etc., there is a real difference in terms of culture for us. So we've tried, but definitely there is a difference. Yeah.
So you would say you're stuck in some sort of bias where it will become a culture misfit, or is it just because you haven't found somebody who will fit, and that's, you know, out of luck?
No, we are always looking for the right one. So I hope we'll find it. It's just that on the average, we have a culture that is pretty different from the traditional one of engineering schools. There is one that we might hire. It's just, for us, it's more of an exception. And most of the time, when we have a process of assisting people, you'll see that people from Epitech can be a bit reluctant at the beginning, but they will just get on well with you if you're good at what you do. Whereas people from engineering school will challenge you very, very soon, and if something breaks from the beginning, it's over. So that's based on our experience. I'm not saying it's true anywhere, anytime, but from our experience, yeah.
Thanks a lot. It was very, very interesting.
L'enfant
lot for me.